Okay, good morning everybody. Welcome to the Budget Scrutiny Meeting for Corporate Services and Economic Growth, but we also welcome scrutiny members from other scrutiny committees so that we can all have a look at the budget, among other things. So, first on the agenda, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Jackson, Councillor Wallace, Councillor Humphrey, Councillor Watson, Councillor Patterson and Councillor A. Watson as well.
Thank you very much. So the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 1 to 6, they've been circulated. Everybody happy with those? Agreed. Thank you. Disclosure of members' interests. Any to declare? No. Okay. You circulated 4 panel cabinet decisions, pages 7 to 10 to note. Nothing on there that we need to look about? No. Okay. Next is the budget. So this is the budget 2022-23 and the medium-term financial plan, which is the big blue fronted document with some addendums. Can I ask, who's going to start this, Glenn? Ask Glenn to introduce this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. The budget this year has been extremely an extremely smooth operation, in that we have had a huge amount of help and support and guidance from Jan Willis, who has done a fantastic job for the Council in helping us get this budget together. And I would also like to thank Alison Elston and the staff in that section. The budget is around the 2 key priorities of this administration, and forgive me if I repeat them again, as I have probably already done a few times. That is to encourage and to support existing and new business, and secondly, to look after our residents the best we can and to help those people who need our help the most. So with those 2 clear priorities, and underneath those there come a whole range of key targets and priorities. But with those in mind, we then undertook the draft budget, which we consulted with the local area councils. We consulted with the public online again for the second time. We did it for the first time ever last year, and we've done it again this year, and the results were very helpful. We also have met with business representatives, Chamber of Commerce and others, to see their reaction to the budget, and that was a really good and helpful meeting. The key point in this budget, members, is that we will not be cutting frontline services. The reason for that are twofold. First of all, because we feel that this county looks tremendous compared to many other councils, and I think all of you who travel around would agree with that. The roads are kept well, the grass is cut, the bins are done on time, all the other parts and sections of the council have continued to run well. But the key point is around our frontline services and all those other services and the staff within them, that they need to have an acknowledgement of continuing to do their work throughout the last very difficult 18 months. So for that reason, and because of that alone, we want to give a clear message to our staff that we are really grateful to them, and that for that reason we are not looking to make any cuts in frontline services this year. So the 2 key elements of the budget are around business, and with business we're looking of course at the Northumberland line and the progression into the new economic corridor, and there will be some announcements on that soon. The work we've done so far with British Volt, as that expands into seeing the first building taking place, and the first jobs being advertised, which won't be far away. We welcome JDR Cables and the fantastically exciting work that they're doing in delivering cables to these huge new wind turbines on the Dogger Bank and elsewhere. And there are other new exciting developments on the way that will provide real decent jobs for the people in Northumberland. We are encouraged by the fact that unemployment is continuing at a decent level in Northumberland, but we would like to see everyone get a job, or as close to everyone as we can. So whilst the unemployment figures are very reassuring, we want to see that getting even better. And finding more and more jobs for those people. And helping to do that will be around the town deals that we're involved with. The levelling up, which will bring new opportunities as well. And we know that we have several several key and exciting projects already lined up for the Blythe town deal, and multi-millions of pounds going into Blythe, and we want to see the same in Ashington. And also other towns like Bedlington and Shoppington, those sort of areas that also need investment, and we would like to see that happen over the term of our office. There are other areas that also need investment, and we're pleased that we are seeing funding coming to those as well. We know that we will have to invest in Hexham, and we are looking forward to seeing some progress in Hexham, as well as our Borderlands deal, which is delivering a new theatre in Berwick, which will be hugely important for the people in Berwick, and also the Whisky Distillery and Visitor Centre at Ardgeffer in Wooler, which will be hugely important as well for those areas. And equally important for this county is for us to pay some attention to farming and the environment. That was raised by Councillor Mather a couple of council meetings ago. We know that there is a change in the agenda for farming and for tenant farmers and landowners. So we need to make sure that we get the balance right between rewilding and forestry and environmental schemes, by remembering that the county looks beautiful because of that patchwork of farmers, because of the way the county looks, and because we need to ensure that we have food security. We've seen what happens when you allow yourself to be reliant on others to provide you with sources of energy, and we're seeing that now. We don't want the same thing to happen with food. So that's important for us as well. Turning then to the other key priorities about doing the best we can for our residents. We know about the schools building programme, huge investment in schools. The leisure programme to provide that really important healthy lifestyles and enjoyment for our people. The leisure provision and the new buildings in Berwick and in Morpeth, and the work that we're doing in other towns is hugely important as well. We recognise the need to work closely with Northumberland College and work as best we can with them, along with the Port of Blythe, in ensuring that upskilling takes place and that those younger people who are coming out of school, perhaps not wishing to follow an academic career, will have that opportunity to learn new skills that will allow them to find work and prosperity for their families in Northumberland. Equally important is affordable housing. We must make sure that we have the housing that's fit for everyone. So we put aside a significant amount of money over the next 5 years to invest with partners in a new spread of tenanted and joint ownership houses. We are really committed to the work we're doing on climate change, and I would thank members for the cross-party support that you have given our small but really effective team doing that work. We are going to be seeing to over £5 million worth of insulation in people's houses over the next year. And we will also be installing over 100 electronic vehicle charging, including those on-street ones for those people that can't reach from their homes. So, significant investment in other areas. Let's take Ashington, for example. We know in Ashington that there is an issue of fly tipping. It's an issue that causes significant concerns, both in Ashington and Blythe, but we are finding, I think it's getting on for £250,000, where we're going to be building compounds to allow people to be able to better deal with their rubbish so the fly tipping figures come down, which we need to see. We've got a huge investment in roads ahead of us, and I'm sure Councillor Riddle will ask answer any specific questions on that. But one of the key points in this is work on a piece of road called Todstead. That's where you go from the A697 at the Anglers Arms near Long Framlingham and Long Horsley up to Rothbury. That road suffers from significant land slippage, and over the last few years we've spent significant amounts of money trying to keep that from getting any worse, but also investing in expert opinion and advice about how we should best deal with that. We have taken the decision this year to actually get on and fix that road once and for all. That's going to cost around £10 million. That's money that's hard to find, but we are taking that as being the right thing to do, and councillors like Councillor Trevor Thorne, in whose patch it is, has done a tremendous job in highlighting the need to get on with this. So that's what we're going to do. Investment in public toilets. You know, I'm sure, that councils up and down the land are doing their best to get rid of public toilets, divest them themselves of the cost and the responsibility. We're doing absolutely the opposite in Northumberland, because I believe having public toilets, and I underline the next bit, with correct signage and also with the correct links to the apps you can get, such as Toilet Finder and so on, are really important to our visitors and really important to our residents, particularly those older people and particularly those people with younger children. So we have found £1.3 million to spend on updating and renewing some of our toilet provision. We are also finding a significant amount of money on cycling and walking, and also on our parks. Our parks and open spaces proved hugely useful during the COVID days. It allowed people the chance to get closer to nature, to get fresh air, and to get the enjoyment of being out in the open. So that's why we're finding more money, not less, more money to spend on parks and open spaces. In addition to all of this, we have found £50,000 to spend in Cramlington, specifically for Cramlington, to provide a blueprint which will be led by the Cramlington members, to give us an idea of what Cramlington could do for itself in terms of being a very special place that perhaps needs that new look, to see how can that be improved. How could it be, for example, a green town that does away with a lot of cars in specific areas and relies on cycling and walking. There are loads of things that Cramlington could do, so that's specifically for Cramlington, and I think that will be very useful, and we will then build on that work once that work has been done. We're also finding £50,000 new money for climate change community work, where we will encourage local communities to bid into a community fund to allow them to invest in specific climate change work, whether it be planting trees or wildflower meadows or any number of ways. And that will allow them to feel very much more empowered, I think, to come to us and work with us on climate change work in their localities. We've found £70,000 for the Jubilee Fund, and I thank Councillor Watson for doing a lot of work on this, which will allow us to properly celebrate in our local areas Her Majesty and all the work she's done for us. And finally, we have found £50,000 of new money to invest in work on inequalities. And the first step in that is to hold a summit at the end of March, which will bring together all those people who work within this area. And also, we're going to invite the Chamber of Commerce, we're going to invite British Volt and other people in industry to see what we as a county council can do to get more involved politically and more, therefore, able to support the work that goes on now brilliantly, but actually to see if we ourselves can do more, because it is something that we really have to do, and we're committed to that. Finally, absolutely finally, in the budget, you'll see there's a figure for transformation. That is around getting in specific advice to help us be able to deliver the work that we do more effectively and efficiently. And I think that work will prove to be very useful going forward. So with that, can I thank you very much again? I'm very proud of this budget, and I'm very proud of the members who have helped pull it together, and specifically to the staff who have helped us do that.
Thank you very much, Glenn, for that very comprehensive introduction. So before we go to questions, we've got Jan on the screen somewhere. She's available to answer technical questions. We've also got portfolio members, or some of them, to answer, if they can, questions on their portfolios. Before we go to members of the committee, I'm just going to go to a written question I've received before the meeting from Councillor Hunter, who unfortunately can't be here today. So she had a two-point question. The first one was to confirm that £40 million for the Berwick Schools redevelopment is in the budget. And to answer that particular one, I can do that. There has been an addendum circulated showing the breakdown of the schools and quite clearly showing 40 million for the Berwick Partnership Schools, or £39,896,203. So that's in the budget. The reason it wasn't broken down previously in the version before was that the Seaton Valley Federation was still taking part in their consultation about reorganisation, so that those figures couldn't be finalised till that was done. So that's the reason it wasn't in previously. Good.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hunter has been in touch about this, and that's why we asked that the addendum should go out, making it clear. There are areas in this budget where specific schemes are put in together under a heading. So, for example, car parking. There is a budget of around £1 million. That includes a car park in Alnwick. It includes one, I think, in Newbingham, but I may be wrong on that. But it also includes one in Corbridge. They'll all get done. The money's there, but it's just, you know, more than anything else, it's space and being able to keep things clear. But I'm more than happy to take specific questions on that.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. So that's answered Councillor Hunter's first question. The second question, which I'll read out. A review into the education provision for all school children of all ages and abilities within the Berwick Partnership commenced in summer 2021 with an informal consultation. Will the administration give me their assurance that the figure already within the budget will remain in the budget and be increased if required to be used to deliver the agreed future education provision within the whole Berwick Partnership for all children of all ages and abilities, including children with special needs, which may include building new schools and relocating schools? At present, we do not know what the future model would look like. A prime example is there are currently some first school children with special needs from the Berwick Partnership area travelling 40 to 50 miles each way per day to access the education provision to meet their needs. All education provisions should be able to be offered locally, which would also help with the carbon reduction agenda. So that's for the administration.
Thank you very much. Well, all the schools that are within the school building programme are important to us, and so special needs provision. At this stage, we will keep the figure that appears in the budget as it is, and I'm not going to cut funding from one school or one from another until we've had a full and frank discussion at Cabinet. But as I say, we know from Councillor Seymour and particularly from Hunter recently about the need to ensure that we invest in Berwick, and that's what we're going to do. And that's why it's in the budget, and that's why we've listened to the people of Berwick, and that's why we feel Berwick's really important, and that's why we've invested in many other ways, and that's why we're going to invest in schools.
Thank you, Glenn. So I'll reach out to the members here. Oh, Councillor Dunn.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to refer to some of the efficiencies that are listed in the appendix, as obviously you thought we probably would. First of all, adult social services. In last year's budget, savings were identified on the management of risks in individual care and support plans, and that's the same.
Could you give us a page number for that one?
No, I haven't got it open.
Oh, right.
Efficiencies is Appendix 9.
Page 55.
Yeah. Sorry, in last year's budget, savings were identified on the management of risks in individual care and support packages. And in this year, there's 3 million of savings expected to come from the ongoing management of risks in individual care and support plans. So I just need some clarification on exactly what that means, how long we can keep doing this under that same heading without it being detrimental to the vulnerable people that we're responsible for, and is there a risk that it isn't really achievable? And moving on from that one,
should we answer that one first?
no, because this is connected,
right,
if
okay.
that's all right. Just recommendation 18 on page 3, we're asked to approve a 1% increase in council tax for adult social care, and note that the assumed increase included in the financial plan is carried forward to 2023, 24, 24, 25. Now, in last year's budget, there was no assumption that this would carry on at all, so it's just why the change? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have Richard? Is that that one?
So I'll probably pass it in the first instance to officers and Jan if she's available. In terms of the, I'm just looking for my file here on care management savings. So I'll let Jan answer the second bit first of all, and if Kath wants to answer the first bit, she's welcome, and I'll wade in after that. Would probably be best.
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Dunn. I'm not entirely clear what your question was. I think you were talking about the adult social care precept and why we've assumed that that continues for each year of the MTFP, but it may well be that I've misunderstood your question, so perhaps you could just clarify for me.
Well, I think we've got Cass going to answer the...
No, sorry, that was right, Jan. It was just when we were setting last year's budget, we approved a 1%, but there was nothing to say it would come back again this year and the next year.
Okay, so I can quickly answer that. That's based on the provisional local government finance settlement that we've had. So last year we had the flexibility to apply up to 3% in the form of an adult social care partnership. We only applied 1.75%. So the government have said that we can carry forward the other 1.25%. And in addition to that, we can levy a further 1%. And the 1% can be applied in each year of the new comprehensive spending review. So so that's the answer to your question, okay. Councillor Dunn.
Well, I think that's answer to the second part. I think the first part, Kath was wanting to answer, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just to advise Councillor Dunn in relation to this is an area that we have looked into in some significant detail. We are confident, and we will give that guarantee that nobody will lose out on any essential parts of their care packages that are currently being delivered. But what we do know that as care packages develop, we are able to review the providers, the resources that go in there. We can find more efficient ways of delivering those services, which allows us to make those savings. And this has been scrutinised quite significantly, and the team who are working on this are clear that they do believe that they will be able to make those efficiencies.
Thank you very much. Right, do you have another member?
Sorry, could I just make this clear, because I'm right in saying that will not affect, and it's very important this, it will not affect the care packages in any way, will not be detrimental to any of the people that we deal with. We've been given that assurance, so I hope everyone's quite clear on that. This is not, quote, a cut, quote. It is not at all. And Kath McAvoy-Carr has made that clear. I think it's really important. If you want to come back on that, Kath, please. Yeah,
just to reaffirm that this is not about cutting services to families. It's about finding more efficient ways to deliver the care plans that meet the assessed needs of that particular resident.
Thank you, Kath. Right, do we have any other members with a question? Councillor Reid, I look forward. This annual list of questions. Look forward to this. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I've been looking back through previous budgets, and it always appears to me that adult social services are the thing that get battered every year. I mean, a third of the £9 million you're trying to save this year come out of adult social services again. And I was just wondering how long do you think you can keep this up? Draining money out of there. I realise it's the biggest budget, but every year it's adult social care that's carrying the burden of their cuts. So how long do you think you can keep that going was one of the questions. As far as the efficiencies are concerned, in children's services, they've got independent fostering agencies. That's £100,000. Does that mean we're using them more or using them less? What does that actually mean? And then you've got Kylo House, additional income. I hate it when you put these things in. How can you guarantee that you're going to get 350,000 out of that? And it's back to this kind of review. when are you going to put the prices up? How are you going to, you know, are people going to decide that they can't put people with us because the prices have gone up? And then the thing below is the reduction in out-of-county placements. You're going to save 240,000 this year, and next year over, well, £1.75 million. I mean, how much are we spending on out-of-county placements if we can afford to save £1.75 million next year? And then on the over the page,
This is page 56 for those.
yeah, we're now on page 56. The bottom item, which is cross-directorate and corporate, review of executive and senior management structure, £1 million? I mean, you're either going to have to do a lot more with a lot fewer people, or, well, I don't know how you're going to save £1 million out of the management structure. So I would like to know how you think you're going to achieve that. And as far as you saying, you know, there's nobody going and there's nobody, you know, nobody's going to lose their job, there aren't any redundancies or anything like that. You can't save £1 million on senior management without having the same number of people. So that was that. The one thing I do like is you've actually put the capital programme on a big sheet of paper, which I could read without a pair of glasses. So thank you very much for that. So the other questions, recommendation 38, the leader says,
Which page, sorry?
it's at the front. The leader in his speech said that you were wanting to help people who are in the most need, and yet you're willing to put up the council rents by 4.01%, which is kind of 1% above inflation, and according to the document. And you know, when we hear that living standards are being squeezed as much as they are, and for once, actually, the HRA is so well managed that there's plenty of money in there. I think after we've spent what we want to spend, there's 16 million in there. I just think that perhaps we could be thinking about not putting the rents up this year, just as a gesture to acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of financial pressure on people. And this is just one thing that some of the least fortunate people that we have in the county, this could actually help them if we didn't do that. And on from that, I realise this has got nothing to do with us, but it fundamentally has got quite a bit to do with us. The Chancellor stood up in Parliament and said, I'm going to help people with their electricity and gas bills by giving everybody a rebate on the council tax. Well, did we know that the government were going to use us to deliver that? How is it going to be delivered? Are we just going to say to the government, this is how much we raise from A's and B's, this is how much you owe us? And all of us know, and it's not just the Conservative, it's every government there's ever been has beaten councils over the head at every opportunity. And I cannot see the government giving us all of the money that we're going to relieve people with, if you see what I mean. You know, we send the government a bill that says we raise, I've got no idea, we raise £20 million from the A's and B's. You're going to have to give us 10 million to cover what you've said. They're going to come back and say, well, we'll give you 8. I just know that they are going to find a way of not giving us it all. And I realise you can't answer that, and I realise you're probably on the same side as me, but I would like to know how that's going to work. Am I going to get another line on my bill that says government relief at whatever? How is that going to be delivered? And the other thing about, Glenn was talking about food security. Being a farmer, I would have thought you would have realised that we haven't been able to feed ourselves for 200 years. We've been importing food from everywhere since 1700 and something. You know, like the Corn Laws were the thing that started it. So, you know, we are never going to be able to we're never going to have food security because we're always going to have to import it. So that's that. Are we talking about the questionnaire yet?
That's another item. We can
You'll be pleased about that. So there was two things in the capital programme that the Blythe Relief Road has got money in there, which is great. But I have heard that it's been cancelled. I've heard it's been rerouted. I've heard that we can't do it. I've heard so many things, but yet we're still going to spend £900,000 this year doing what? And have you renamed the Asherton, Blythe and Tyne line again? Because in the line in the capital programme says Newcastle to Northumberland line. So can you make your mind up? Because every time the Prime Minister stands up in Parliament, he still calls it the Asherton, Blythe and Tyne line. So changing its name again, you know. Anyway, there we are.
Okay, thank you for those extensive questions. So,
Yeah.
do we...
Well, I'll happily take on a couple of those if you want.
Richard, are you going to...
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll pick off the ones that I can do, straightforward. I wasn't born at the time of the Corn Laws, so I'll leave that to Glenn. Sorry. No, that's not what I meant.
That's not what you meant.
In term, and I've no familiarity with the Corn Laws, but I would assume that food security will be high on the government's agenda. In terms of the money for the rebate, you know, we've had a lot of money coming through from government on other things when it comes to business support, and it's come in and out the door. We haven't had to top it up, and so I would expect that would be fully funded. That's one that's slightly outside our control. The bit on house bills and the 4.1%, I might defer to John in a second, and the one on corporate in terms of savings in corporate, it might be better for Jan to address that one. And then the Blythe Relief Road, I think probably Wojciech can give a bit of an update now, perhaps.
Yes, thank you. So Blythe Relief Road, shortly, yes, Route 3, which was previously selected, has been cancelled because the developer has built houses on the route. We have prepared new bid for Department for Transport and submitted it already, as far as I remember. We are coming back with few technicalities between them and us. And yes, there is a new road, and it will be built, and it should come to the cabinet very soon. As far as I know, it should be April or something like that. So I'm sure Stuart McNeil should provide more details if you need to.
Some more detail, Councillor Reid?
Yeah, the problem with what's been said is the only way Blythe is going to get any relief by building a new road is the route we chose. Anything else is just going to be pointless.
A bit more detail on that route?
Yeah, so as Wojciech mentioned, Route 3 has been built on, so there are a couple of other options we've looked at, and the outline business case has gone to the Department for Transport. We're receiving feedback on the outline business case with a view to finalising that in the next couple of weeks, and the report will come to Cabinet in April. I appreciate the Route 3 was the ideal and the best performing option, so you know the other options are all still strongly performing and do meet most, if not all, of the objectives.
Yeah, I can clarify that it will also come to this committee as well in April to have a look at. Right, there was John had an answer to the...
I'll attempt to answer your housing question, Jeff. It used to be my portfolio, but it's not now, so appreciate that. There was a government freeze on rents, and, they were frozen when wages and inflation were rising a little. And really, that wasn't sustainable in the long term with the HRA account. and, you know, it's probably a bit of a catch-up. You know, I sympathise that 4% does seem a lot, but when you reckon that it was frozen, I think it was for at least 2, if not 3 years, then, you know, it's got to play a little bit of catch-up.
I think there was some questions about Kath Scott about adult services.
Thanks, Chair. If I can remember the questions in the first place, I will try and answer them in turn. So in relation to the adult social care and the cuts to the adult social care budget, Councillor Reid, as you rightly recognise, the adult social care is a significant budget in any case. And obviously we would prefer not to have to make any savings if we possibly could, but we do live in the real world. Just to, for assurance, we only accept those savings, or we only put forward those savings that we think we can manage. And we have always managed to make those savings previously. So we are confident that the savings that we've managed this year are the savings. Obviously, what we need to be looking at is next year's savings, or the savings for the coming years, to determine whether or not the impact of the savings that we've made so far will have a further impact in the future. In relation to the IFA, the Independent Fostering Agency placements, we know that they are much more costly than the placements that we use in-house, so we always look to reduce those. When I first came to Northumberland, we had in excess of 100 IFA placements, and we've got those down to between 30 and 40 now, and every year we try to reduce the use of those placements, except where they have been agreed as a permanent placement for a child in advance. So we would always look to our own resources first and not seek to use IFA placements. In relation to Kylo House, as I am sure many of you will be aware, Kylo House is our secure unit, and every year we consider the costings around how much a placement per child costs. There is a national shortage of secure placements, and we are always being asked to take placements, and we are confident that the suggested price increase will assist with those, will be agreed to. We are actually middle of the table in terms of costings for our secure placements nationally. In relation to out-of-county placements, that is for looked after children who have complex needs, and we are looking to develop our own in-house services. An average cost for an out-of-county placement can be anywhere between 250 to in some cases £500,000 a placement. So we are per year. So we are looking to see how we can reduce our need to use those placements externally, and to build capacity internally in order to manage those children moving forward.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive answer. I think that's answered pretty much all of Councillor Reid's points. Right, I think Councillor Dodd was next. Sorry.
I believe there was one on corporate finance as well.
Oh, right, okay. Jan,
which Jan might be able to get a little bit.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, as members will be aware, the management team structure is under review. The initial review of the top tier has been completed, although not yet approved, and the intention is to then move on and look at second and third tier. As part of that, to look at spans of control, to do some benchmarking, and the £1 million figure is just based on some very broad initial thinking about where those opportunities might lie. So some of those savings have in fact already been achieved, and we don't need to save very many posts actually with all of the on costs to actually hit that £1 million target. But it is only that at this stage. It's just a target. We think that it's in the right ballpark, but until that more detailed work is completed, we won't be able to confirm it. And I think that's probably all I can say at this stage, Chair.
Thank you very much. So,
Chairman,
Glenn?
just because I think Councillor Reid's point is very important. I think there will be, I don't know whether Jan can help us with the percentage of tenants that receive housing benefit. But it's something perhaps we'll just have a chat about, because it's an important point. I think John's right. There's been a freeze for a long time. This is just purely catching up. those people who are in the lowest income will receive housing benefit, I think, Jan, and I don't know what the percentage is, but I think it's pretty high. And then the other thing that we haven't mentioned is that there is a new level of council tax relief that maybe an officer might just run through, that we've actually increased the level and taken another many thousands of people out of paying council tax.
We'll discuss that in the Revs and Bens report.
Good.
Sorry, could I just come back?
Very briefly, Jeff, there are other people.
So I'll just be quick. So the schedule efficiencies is actually just a guess then. Is
The
what
budget,
we-
which is what budgets
they're
are.
not actually firm figures. We've just heard from the 151 officer that the £1 million is a guess. So you know, what does that say? What does that say about the rest of it? And as far as the rents are concerned, the government forced us to reduce the rents by 1% for several years for whatever reason it was. But this isn't a national emergency. It really is. You know, people are being squeezed really, really hard here. And if we can afford, which we can, not to put the rent up, I realise it's a catch-up. But if you think of it, what the Chancellor's done is he's lending us all 200 quid. Because, you know, the cap will not reduce. The price of gas will go down, but the cap won't go down, so he can get the money back that he's given us. And I didn't get an answer. I didn't get an answer about how that is going to, how the mechanism of us supporting people via what the government, how is that going to work? I would really like to know that,
That's the next
because
report.
I think that, you know, could actually mess our bill up. It's given us a duty that we shouldn't have, to be honest with
I
you.
think we'll discuss that in the Revs and Bens report, I think. And your comments noted. I think we'll move on. Councillor Dodd?
Thank you. Two questions. One was about land slips. We seem to be in a constant state of fixing land slips that seem, you know, we're talking little numbers like 10 million, and the Rothbury ones were 5, 6. You know, that there's a lot of money that must go out of somebody's pocket to save a road or whatever, and those roads are vital. But the question is, are we doing enough to get upstream of these land slips, as in identify where the next one's coming? You know, do we dig everything out now? It might be cheaper than actually having to reform a road and all that. That's one question. The other question is, my farm overlooks sort of the airport. And, you know, one time it was a rarity to see planes coming in and out. Now we see a few more, but it's probably nowhere near the footfall that is going to be required to put the airport into some sort of profitable situation. I mean, it's a long term. Do we need a further depth look at what we're actually going to be asked to spend or fund Newcastle Airport? We love the airport, we all do, and it's one of the jewels in our crown. But is it, you know, we're a shareholder, and we probably need to have a proper think of long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Just on the airport, a report did come to this committee and then to Cabinet on the funding of the airport and steps that have been taken. So that is actually being looked at and addressed. But on the land slips, who would like to?
Thank you, Councillor Dodd. Yeah, land slips, you know, it's one of these things that's totally unpredictable. The one thing we do know about the Todstead one is that it's costing us money regularly to go back and lay tar, you know, 100,000 a time basically to go and repair the road. And this is particularly, it's probably the worst one I think we have in the county. And, you know, we did have one at Powburn, but it's sorted, I think. This one, it's a very difficult technical one to solve. There's lots of water pressures, there's artesian pressure there and everything. And what we've decided to do was sort of grasp the nettle here and do a once and for all, I'm told, fix. And, you know, the figure that's in there isn't a guess, it's a best estimate, I think, of about 8.6 million. You know, it could be as high as 10 million. We don't know, it could be less. But we've got to, I think, grasp the nettle and try and fix this once and for all.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Ball next.
Thanks, Chair. So I just want to look at the reduction in children's services budgets and the efficiencies there, and just highlight a line in a report that came to Facts last week where it says exceptional levels of poverty are dramatically causing rises in child protection interventions and number of children coming into care. And this is poverty levels, and we're going to see an increase of council rents going up, council tax going up, the electric prices are going up, wages are stagnant, so we're going to see more children and young people coming into care. And the figures for 2019-2020, 35% of children in Ashington Central were in poverty then. Obviously, that was pre-COVID figures. Going forward, we're obviously going to see a dramatic rise. Are children's services in Northumberland going to be able to support the number of people that we're going to see, the number of increases? And the other question I've got is directly for Richard, with regards to Real Cinema in Ashington. Can the people of Ashington actually have a date on this? Because the last update that I had is they're still keen. Keen is not putting bricks on the ground. It's not creating jobs in Ashington Central. So can I have an actual date on this, please? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. First I'll go to Kath with the questions about children's services.
Thanks, Chair. In relation to that, you're right to raise the issue around the connections between poverty and the numbers of children who potentially become known to our services via either child protection and or looked after services. We are really cognizant of that, and we do a lot of work around understanding the children who do come into our care, or who eventually come into our care. What we are doing is investing in early help in order to prevent the need for such statutory interventions at a later stage, and we're hopeful that by those investments that we will be able to manage or be able to more effectively support our families, and therefore them not needing that level of statutory support in the future.
Thank you. And Richard, the question about the cinema?
Thanks. I'm very keen to see this one concluded as well, Councillor Paul, believe me. And it doesn't actually fall within my portfolio anymore, but it's still within the capital programme, and there's an update coming shortly, I believe, from Advance, and we'll make sure that the minute that we're able to share that information with you and with people in Ashington, that we will. There's lots of good stuff coming up for people in Ashington in terms of our pitch for a town deal for Ashington, and it's very much necessary as well. So more soon, but I can't give you a date today.
That's great, thank you. And I'm very keen to hear it.
Great. I'll let me come in. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. My question relates to the agenda and this item on the agenda and the wording. The last paragraph, it is important to note there may need to be some revisions to the figures following receipt of the government's final local government finance settlement figures. And it's saying that it's proposed that any changes to the figures as a result of this announcement are delegated to the Council's Section 151 officer in consultation with the portfolio holder, Councillor Wearmouth. And my question is why? If there are, there's a huge amount of detail in all of these reports in front of us, and there is a whole process through which we make these decisions, and given that it's impossible to know what the discrepancy might be between what we expect and what we get, at what point does it become inappropriate for those decisions to be delegated? And my question is simply, why can't it just come back? We have plenty of committee structures. Why can't any decisions on changes to the budget come back to committee? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good question. Jan, do you want to answer that?
Go on, Jan. I would be happy to cover it initially.
If you go first, then
there'll be tidying up around the edges always, in terms of little bits of detail coming back and forth from government. But it's not about removing 10 million here or adding 10 or 20 million in there. And I'm sure that Jan will now give a more full summary.
Thank you. It is usually the case that the final local government settlement confirmation is not received until too late in the process for us to incorporate any last minute changes that come through the final settlement in the budget papers, given that we have to set a balanced budget within a prescribed timescale. So this is normal practice, that any adjustments that are needed arising from that final local government settlement are delegated. If they were of a sufficient magnitude as to materially alter the budget, then of course that's something we would go back to Cabinet, and Cabinet would then make recommendations to full council. But that is rarely the case, and as Councillor Weir said, this is usually just about tidying up. We do also often receive notification of some of our specific grants very late in the day. So it's a pragmatic arrangement, to avoid having to keep repeatedly coming back to council, to make those relatively minor adjustments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got Liz next.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a couple of questions on two totally different things, but the first one was with the efficiencies again, and I noticed that there's removal of vacant posts in the Revs and Ben section and the leisure. I'm just a bit concerned that with everything we've discussed this morning, about the extra things that are coming through about council tax and council tax relief, is it wise to be removing the vacant posts from Revs and Bens, or will the workload not need these positions later on? So I'd like some assurance about that. Also, there was a couple in the leisure sector, vacant posts, or just to know what they are. And secondly, my question was for Councillor Sanderson, really, and I wasn't going to bring this up until the Castle Morpeth Lack next week, but seeing as he mentioned that there was a significant amount in cycling and walking being invested, my question at the Castle Morpeth Lack was going to be whether Limehouse was actually in it, because there's very little in the local transport plan that actually reflected that. But specifically for cycling and walking, we have a scheme going at the minute where the footpath, the 405-004 footpath is being redone, improved. That was done with 30k of external funding found by residents. And now the second part of it, which is in this year's local transport plan, the bridge in the middle of the two paths has not been accepted in this transport plan. So I find it hard to believe that we can be spending this amount of money on a path coming in from two ends that doesn't join in the middle for lack of funding for that specific project. So that's something I would just like to Councillor Sanderson to come back at some point.
Okay, thank you. So who's going to address the first question about the vacant officers?
I'm happy to take that.
Yeah,
Chair.
Jan, yeah.
Yes, so the revenues and benefits caseload has been reducing for some time following the introduction of universal credit, which has seen the DWP taking over responsibility for administering benefits. And the performance of the revenues and benefits service continues to be very high, despite all of the additional demands, very considerable additional demands of administering COVID grants, hardship schemes, business rate relief schemes, etc. So these are posts which have been vacant for some time. There are no proposals to fill them, and therefore they're being deleted from the establishment as part of an ongoing review of our establishment. So Chair, I don't think I'm going to say anything more about that, but on the second point about the leisure savings, could I bring in Alison Elsdon at this point just to explain what those savings are? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. The savings aren't actually leisure savings. Heading there is human resources, organisation development, culture and leisure, and the savings in that area actually relate to some savings, some minor savings in democratic services, some savings in the policy team, and also some savings in the communications team. So there are vacant posts in other areas. There are no leisure posts that are vacant and have been removed from the budget, Chair.
Thank you very much. And then the point about the LTP and footpaths. And
Okay, I think unless John knows the detail of this, I think could you raise that one and get back to the councillor. But so far as the cycling and walking is concerned, we've got Stuart McNaughton here. He will tell us that I think we've just signed off 12 new LC reps. Or is it? Would you be able to just highlight that? Hey,
Stuart. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's 12 local cycling walking infrastructure plans that are now ready to go out to consultation. So we're hopeful that will start in the next 2 to 3 weeks, the consultation on those.
Thank you. And we'll get a specific answer to the councillor on Linebath. Thank you. So Murphy, quickly, I've got...
Sorry, very briefly. Could I ask if Choppington is included in any of those plans? Because currently Choppington has no cycleways whatsoever. We are disconnected from the whole network in Northumberland. So...
Quick answer on that, Stuart?
Choppington is not one of the 12, no.
Okay, thank you. Malcolm?
Thank you, Chair. I'll ask mine one at a time because I think some of my esteemed colleagues here got lost in the ether when he asked them all together. Number 8, new homes bonus. Now, that's been reducing over a number of years. It's due to finish by the looks of it. Are we replacing that? Or my question is, what was the tax base increase? Because it seems we're losing a one hit to be able to take on an annual income of the council tax from the new properties.
So, new homes bonus, I think it's still it comes from central government. And I think it covers some contribution for the equivalent of the first 6 years or so of a house being built or something like that, yeah. Above and beyond what you were anticipating building anyway. So it was to reward additional houses. It is still in there. I think it was coming to an end as a government scheme. Ultimately, we've seen a good number of homes either inhabited or new homes built and inhabited, such that the tax base went up a bit. I think, if I recall correctly, it was about 4 million. But again, Jan will probably have the detail to hand. Jan, if you're there.
Jan, are you there?
The figure that's mentioned.
I didn't unmute myself. I am here. The £4 million for 22-23, we are assuming at this point that it is going to only be for 1 year. That has been top sliced nationally from the amount of government grant to be distributed. So we're getting that 4 million for 22-23. Beyond that, as things currently stand, we are not expecting to get any more new homes bonus. So the new homes bonus is an incentive for house building, and it's recognising that the cost of providing services to each new home built is significantly more than the additional council tax that is raised in respect of that property. So we do get additional council tax income from the increase in the tax base as those new houses come on stream. But that doesn't cover the cost of providing all of the services. So therefore, the new homes bonus was intended to compensate councils for that difference. As we move forward, if new homes bonus is no longer paid, then clearly, that shortfall between the additional tax we raise and the cost of providing services to those properties will increase over time, and that will impact on the council's budget. But we do expect this issue about new homes bonus to be addressed as part of the overall fair funding review and the distribution of government grant to councils, which is going to be moving ahead over the forthcoming year. but great uncertainty at the moment about where we're going to end up.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, your next question?
Just to stay on that one a moment, the tax base increase is mentioned in this document. It's something like 6.5 million for a year. So it just seemed to me we're going to lose 4 million, but we're actually going to get 6.5 million, which should be able to do exactly the services John talks about, but never mind. Number 23. I presume we've renegotiated as much debt as we can to take advantage of the historic low interest rates we've got at the moment.
So on that, that's the sort of Treasury management bit. Jan, again to you, probably best.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Through you. So the Treasury Management Report was presented to Audit Committee at its last meeting. We already benefit from very low interest rates. You know, as and when opportunities to renegotiate rates come along, or to lock in for the longer term to low rates, then we do. But we also have to maintain an appropriate spread maturity profile. You know, I would direct Councillor Robinson to the Treasury Management Strategy for details of how we're going to do that, and that strategy has been published and is available online.
Thank you. My next question is about business rates. And
Okay.
I'd like to understand how they play a part in things. For instance, a business rates collected and kind of ring fence for business use, or do they just disappear into the general pot to replace some of the money that we don't get elsewhere?
Okay. Jan, just quick hold there.
So the business rates that are collected in Northumberland go into a national pot and are then redistributed according to needs. So what we collect locally is not the amount of business rates that we get to spend on our services locally, and it's a very complicated system. It is definitely impacted by a number of the reliefs, which are paid via a separate, what's called a Section 31 grant. So the relationship between what we raise locally and how much of that money we get to spend locally is actually very complex. Again, we were expecting the business rate system to be completely overhauled, and we've been waiting for that national review for a number of years now. At the present time, you know, that is still parked, that review, and we don't know what the government's intentions are going forwards. But at the moment, as I say, you know, the link between what we raise locally and what we retain is not straightforward.
Thank you. Thank you. That leads me on to my next question. Then what is the business rate baseline reset?
Yeah. So again, that's a national exercise which is being carried out. I mean, the business rate system, it's been so long since it was reviewed that huge anomalies have built up within the system. So this reset was supposed to be something that was being done nationally to reset the system and ensure a degree of parity. But again, you know, we still wait for government to tell us when that reset is going to happen, and then to understand the impact. But I think it's fair to say, Chair, that there are a number of, you know, big issues in terms of the, you know, how the local government finance system works, where we've been waiting for clarity for a number of years. And, you know, there is huge uncertainty about what our funding position is going to be going forward. We have effectively a one-year financial settlement. We really don't know how much funding we're going to have in years 2, 3 and beyond, nor do we understand how all of these different reviews are going to interact with one another. And that's going to be a major challenge for us in terms of our forward planning from a financial perspective.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sounds like a nightmare, but
Yep,
I've still got a couple more.
Yep, keep going, keep going.
Do we get any business rates? Are we likely to see any business rates of the likes of British Volt and JDR and whatnot, or because of its enterprise zone status, or because of the way it was funded for the infrastructure? Are we likely to see any?
Two-part question to that. So the JDR is in an enterprise zone, for the first 20 so many years. The business rates go to pay off the loan from the LEP and so on, and that puts money back into the LEP's funding for them to then consider going on and doing other things. JDR, no. British Volt isn't within the boundary of the LEP enterprise zone, and so we would see something back from that. And Jan will correct me, but business rates is even more complicated because there's a certain amount that we get in terms of business rate retention, I think, isn't it? And then then some of it goes back to the pot and so on. So there's a whole formula that goes with it, which I won't try and explain, and Jan might not, but she might comment.
I'm not going to try and explain all the intricacies right here and now. I'd be happy to provide a briefing on that if members would find it helpful. But I think the short answer to the question is yes, we will benefit from additional business rates income on the British Volt site.
The airport refinance on the debt, is that 1 for 1, where it's put off for 2-3 years?
I don't know if you caught that, Jan. It's about a refinance of the airport debt. And there was a paper that came to this, as Councillor Bourne mentioned, but I can't quite recall the detail.
I know all the details, Richard, but in here it's got the airport's asked for a 2-year moratorium on repaying the interest. And it says after that it will start to be repaid. I'm just making sure it's at least 1 for 1, if not slightly better than 1 for 1.
Yeah, so Chair, I think I can assist with that. So there are discussions going on at the moment with the other LA7 authorities who are all shareholders in the airport, along with a private shareholder, about how that's going to work. But at present, we don't think that that's going to require the council to put any more money into the airport. But of course, you know, we have to wait and see, you know, sort of how the airport's financial position recovers as we come out of COVID and return to hopefully more normal trading conditions. But at the moment, you know, we're not expecting the council to have to provide any additional support, and that detail of exactly how all of that unwinds is subject to further discussion and review as you know, as things become clearer. But for the moment, you know, the most important priority is that, you know, we have secured, you know, some the financial viability for a 2-year period of the airport, and that should give them time to you know, to bring forward their plans for repayment of those dividends which we would otherwise have received.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Last question.
Last question, go on.
Thank you, Chair. And it's about the finance settlement, the government's finance settlement. And I understand that we haven't got the exact details of it yet and whatnot. But if we get more, if we get slightly more than we anticipate, or what all these figures are based on, will we use that just to pay down the debt that we need to repay in this budget? Will we use it to put into adult services, children's services, which have been obviously identified in your consultation as being one of the most important things the council can do? I'm just wondering what happens if it's a little bit better than what we're expecting.
Okay. Jan, have you got an answer for that?
Well, I think it's unlikely that it's going to be better. Usually, Any movement between the provisional and the final settlement is in the other direction. But I guess it depends on how much better it was. You know, we would have to have some further discussions with Cabinet in the first instance, and as I've said, you know, we would need to consider whether that was, you know, whether it was material change to the budget that we needed to bring that back through Cabinet and Council. But I have to say, I think it's extremely unlikely. You know, and most likely thing is that any additional grant that we received would be added to the general fund reserve so that it's available for use going forwards for future years' budgets. And I think one of the things that I would like to draw members' attention to is clearly a lot of attention been focused on the budget proposals for 22-23, but within the medium-term financial plan, we do have a very significant forecast budget deficit for years 2 and 3, in large part due to the fact that we have only received a 1-year funding settlement, and a lot of the funding we are only getting for 1 year. So, you know, smoothing those, using some of that additional money to smooth future savings and requirements is part of the overall strategy. And we are already proposing that some of the additional grant money that's been allocated for this year is used in that way, because we do have to ensure that our financial position is sustainable in the medium term, not just in the forthcoming year. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, can I just reply
go on
to
then,
that?
one more.
Sorry, it's just, you know, we've identified, there's something like £50 million worth of savings here over the next 4 years. Now, is that just the best guesstimate because we only have a 1-year defined settlement and whatnot? So that £50 million might not actually end up being £50 million. Is this what you're saying?
That's exactly it. So, you know, we didn't know until, it usually comes up to Christmas time and you get to find out what the Chancellor is going to give you for Christmas in terms of the provisional settlement. So I think it was an increase of, was it 6.9 or 6.7% on previous in terms of the core spend? If it had been lower, you would be looking at more savings or efficiencies, or however you want to describe it. But similarly, if we receive generous packages, if there's a reflection from the Treasury that actually the cost of councils doing business has gone up, and all of the council networks lobby for something that's more of a generous settlement, then that will be less painful and less challenging to achieve. And of course, as Jan mentioned, there's the fairer funding arrangements that might come to pass, and I don't know if that's intended that will be looked at this year, and we might see the sort of that manifest itself in the next funding settlement, which is part of perhaps the reason why we've been given a 1-year settlement in the first instance, because it does tend to get moved further and further away. We've hoped for a 3-year settlement for as long as I've been a councillor. I don't think we've ever had one, but that's what would give you the certainty in terms of that, Malcolm.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, thank you. Does everyone wants to speak on? Oh no, we've got one more. Great.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to, again, just outline the increase in the housing rents. I know we've kind of just been through this, but I would agree with other colleagues that we are going to have a lot of people who are going to be in real financial straits with a 4.10% increase. I would like to suggest that maybe we can defer this for a year, maybe see if we can increase it over the following 3 years to achieve the 4% that we're going to need, if that's a possibility. I just think with utility bills, obviously Councillor Ball was talking about children in poverty. I think that might be a better solution. Sorry. Oh, okay. For me, we're going to have a lot of people who aren't on housing benefit, who won't get that relief. People who are going out to work and are paying a full rent on these properties, who are going to really suffer for this. So if we can consider it.
Can I?
Thank you. Can we have Glenn? Yeah.
What I said before was that I completely sympathise with the point that was made, and that I'll have further discussions with Jan Willis and others. The thing we have to remember is that we have got to create money in order to be able to spend money, and we have. And I'm not absolutely sure of how long that budget cut is, that cut in rents has been for, but I think it's been for at least 3 years. So tenants have had 3 years without any increase.
After your reduction,
Reduction. So, and we are really keen to see an affordable housing big programme take place. We really are keen to see the properties improved where they need to be improved. And in order to spend money like that, you have to create money. The hardest hit people are probably already all on housing benefit anyway, but I said at the beginning that I will find out those figures, and we will certainly look at this. I promise you, we will look at this over the next few days and see what might be done. But I would just leave it that you can't, if you say, well, we're not going to make that saving or that increase. We then got to find the money from somewhere else. And if we said to you, we're not going to spend very much money on affordable housing, you'd give me a hard time on that as well, I expect. So there's always a balance. But leave it with me. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Right, so we...
Chair,
Oh,
if I may, just on that as well, the best ways to target people who are suffering most in terms of financial hardship is bespoke packages. So you could have someone who is living perfectly comfortably in some of our housing and has benefited from the rent reductions. And if you compare them to someone who's living perhaps within a property that's privately rented, that rent could be much higher than is encountered in the housing stock within the council. So you must be careful just to make sure that the very worthy thing to make sure that you want to protect those people who are most vulnerable and struggling in terms of their bills. But the best ways to achieve it sometimes are a bit more refined than a blanket change in terms of council housing rents or things like that. But entirely endorse what Glenn said. We're happy to look at it, and we'll get some analysis done from the team, and you can get the clarity that would provide us.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Ball.
Just quickly, I would like to hope that Glenn is really banging on that door demanding more money for Northumberland, because we have so many people in poverty and in work poverty, and the numbers are going up and up. So that increase in rents and there's so many people that aren't entitled to a penny of help. National insurance is going up. Wages, as I said, are stagnant. So we're going to see more and more people struggling. So we really need to be digging our heels in on this. We've seen the government waste billions, and we need some of that coming back up north. We really do. So I really hope that we can get to see Glenn banging on that door, demanding more money for Northumberland. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Richard, would you like to move on?
I know you'd like to move on. I don't know where this bit comes from, that wages are particularly stagnant, wages are increasing. But nonetheless, we do bang on the door of government for funding. You've seen a large amount of funding come for the railway line, for British Vault, for JDR. We've got a very good settlement in terms of the local government settlement, and we'll be banging on the door for in terms of the fair funding review as well, to make sure that we get the best that we can for Northumberland.
Thank you.
Yet we still see more and more efficiencies for Northumberland.
Okay, well, point made.
Wrong with being efficient, Councillor Ball.
Okay, there's briefly. Last one, go on.
Yeah, it's just for Jan, really. Recommendation 23, Jan, is to approve the use of the General Fund Reserve. 25 million, is it? And another 7.8 million in 2024-25. Set aside as a voluntary minimum revenue provision. I wonder if you just could explain that for me, please, and just where does that leave what general reserves?
Yes, through you, Chair, happy to answer that question. So minimum revenue provision is the amount that the council has to set aside for repayment of debt. In this instance, there has, as I'm sure members will have noted, there has been a big increase in the capital programme, on top of what was already a very ambitious capital programme, and to ensure that that did not have an impact on the council's revenue budget going forwards, because we are required to reflect that provision for the repayment of debt as well as any interest associated with it in our revenue account. The decision was taken, the proposal is that we use some of our general fund reserve to make an upfront payment of or an upfront minimum revenue provision. So instead of spreading it over the life of the assets, it's all being provided for in one lump. So far as the reserves are concerned, if I could refer you to Appendix 3, which sets out the forecast reserves position. I think you'll find the answer to your question there.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, right, so we'll move on the agenda then to the next item, which is the revenue and benefits policies, which has often been lumped in with the budget, but it actually covers a separate report. Richard, going to address this one. Thank you, then.
I don't have any specific comments. I don't know if Jan or Graham wants to...
Well, I think it would be good to highlight the extra support, the £200 support for those that are most in need under the council tax support scheme. Graham, do you want to sort of just explain how that works?
Yes, I can do that, Chair, unless John wants to update.
Happy for you to do that, Graham.
Okay, thanks, Jan. Okay, yeah, well, we've got a suite of policies within Revs and Bens that are used, or revenues and benefits that are used for the day-to-day administration. Not for information, just covers things like many of the things we've been talking about today: council tax, business rates, housing benefit, sundry debt. The policies are reviewed annually, but traditionally that's been done as part of the budget papers. This year we're taking them as a separate item. There's two policies where there's that have been updated for 2022. The first one is a council tax discount policy, which the Chair has referred to, and within that policy there's a proposal for a £200 hardship payment for working age council tax support claimants. Again, for information for members, our council tax support scheme for working age claimants supports up to a maximum of 92%. Pensioners still get support up to 100%, but that means that everybody has to pay an element of council tax depending on circumstances. So this policy or this proposal would be to continue a hardship payment, which is in the current financial year £300, and in 2021 was £150, and that £200 payment would take out of council tax altogether, i.e. it would clear that 2022-23 liability, 1,958 based on current numbers, and then it would reduce by £200 the liability of 5,062 council taxpayers by the £200. The second update in the relief that the government have announced for next year for retail, hospitality and leisure businesses, they're going to receive 50% business rate relief off their 2022-23 bill. And the recommendation within the report is just to approve the policies and recommend to Cabinet.
Okay, thank you very much, Graham. Do we have any questions on that? Liz?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, welcome the £200 payment that's going to come about. We've always argued certainly I've always argued that I think the 100% support grant is an easier mechanism to deliver this. It's not going to happen this year. Next year, are we expecting a grant? This came from the COVID-19 support grant, is that right?
Yeah.
What's the will we get that next year? Or next year will we be left to the 92% again? Because I can't see that the financial pressures on people will have sort of lessened any by next year, and we'll be back into this argument again.
Yeah. I'm not aware, Councillor Dunn, of any plans to have like a hardship scheme going forward. But that would obviously come into next year's budget discussions, really, I think. I'm not aware of the government going to provide any additional funding going forward for that type of COVID sort of relief. If I may do, though, could I just mention quickly the council tax energy rebate that Councillor Reid made some reference to? I mean, obviously, this is just hot off the press because we haven't got the guidance yet. We are expecting the guidance this week, but it's been called a council tax energy rebate. But it's not actually going to go on your council tax bill. It is going to be a payment that we as the council have to make to residents who are in the council tax list. But it's originally, when it was first announced, we thought it was going to reduce the council tax bill. It isn't. The council tax bill will be the same, and this £150 will be a separate payment. But like I've said, we are just awaiting guidance, which is expected this week for that.
So just on that, assuming it's a payment we have to send out, do we, is it going to be by cheque, or we have to try and get everyone's bank details? It sounds quite a administratively heavy way of doing it.
Yeah, we think it probably will be administratively quite heavy. I mean, we've estimated in Band A and Band D in Northumberland, we've got nearly 140,000 properties out of a total of about 157,000 for every band. I think from the information we've got, we're being asked to use any direct debit details that we already hold for people who pay by direct debit, which is probably around the 80% mark. I think we're quite high with collectors by direct debit. But that would mean that we've got to have a process, depending on guidance, to pay out the other 20%, which probably is best done via the bank. However, I suppose you can't rule out having to maybe issue some cheques as part of that process. So,
and I take the government's not going to pay for the stamps, the postage. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Reid.
Thanks for that. This is kind of what I was saying in my questions. How is this going to be delivered? You can absolutely guarantee the government are not going to say, oh, and here is £100,000 for you to administer this. This is going to cost us money. The direct debits might be free, but we've got to work all that out. You've got to start sending cheques out. Can somebody find out how much it costs us to issue a cheque? I remember there was one company that I used to deal with many years ago. If you invoiced them for anything less than £100, it cost them £105 to send a cheque out by the time it had gone through all of their processes. So how much is it costing us to send cheques? I'm telling you. Anyway, in a way that's kind of good, because what I was dreading was if it came off your council tax bill, so your council tax bill was that much less, then next year when we don't get it, people would be paying the new amount plus £136 more than they paid this year. I'm telling you, these things are far more complicated than they ever appear to be. And that's a bombshell. That Richard and Glenn need to ring somebody up this afternoon and just say, do you realise how much this is going to cost us? Because you heard what the officer said, more than half of the properties that we collect council tax on are in A and B. I don't think the government has thought about this properly at all as far as councils like Northumberland. In London, there'll hardly be any properties in A's and B's. So then the government aren't going to have to do hardly anything for them. But the government, are we going to have to, when are we going to get the money first before we send it out? I mean, I know you can't answer that, Graham, but, there's a thought. We do not have the resources to rebate people £100 and odd to 150,000 houses, have we? Or whatever the figure is. That's just nonsense. But what I would just want to say is that our revenues and benefits policies are always first rate, always good. We've got an excellent person in charge who is calm and never flustered, just gets on with it. I haven't had anybody complain to me about the way they've been treated by the Revs and Ben's department for, I don't know, 6 years. So it's all good stuff. We just have to accept the policies, Chair, I think, and rely on Graham and his team to keep delivering it. But we need to be aware of what he said about the money. And the only other thing I would say is that 4.1% rise in rents impacts on our housing benefit delivery, of course, because if you're on 100%, if you're in a council house and you're on 100% relief, then, you know, the rest of the council taxpayers are paying it. So it's going to cost us more money to put the rent up by 4.1%. And the one barbed thing I shall say before I finish is that the leader sat there and he said that the rents needed to go up to deliver affordable housing. When has it ever been acceptable for the poorest people in the county to pay for an affordable housing programme? That is just outrageous. What we're saying is we're going to charge people higher rents so we can build affordable homes. We should be using the proper capital programme that all of us contribute to, not the people who are paying rent. It's just another way of robbing the poor of dignity.
Okay, thank you for those points. Right, Councillor Dodd.
Yeah, we had a little bit in scrutiny over empty houses, second homes, etc. And I'm looking at page 3 of this report where we have the empty homes premium. And 2019, 2020, 21, we've set out to sort of reap more out of this. Are we getting more out of this? Councillor Darwin and I visited a property in Ponteland and it looked like an empty property. It felt like an empty property. It was unkempt, cars was parked and rusting, etc. And this wasn't a cheap property. This would have been thick end of, you know, £800,000, and it was empty. And the neighbour next door was worried about a tree that came down and she can't find the owner, etc. So it just highlights that we might set all this out, but we probably may not be collecting the correct amounts of money from people. I just wondered if anybody could reassure me that we are doing the right things here to alleviate a lot of empty properties. And in scrutiny last week, I mean, I did some work 10 years ago and we had about 2,500 empty houses. That's down now to about just under the 2,000, but it's still 2,000 empty properties. These are long-term empty properties. You know, that's the size of a decent village that we are missing out on lots of things. So I just wondered if what's been put in over the years is working. Thank you.
Okay. Graham, have you got any figures on the collection rate for empty properties? Or?
Not on the specifics that the member has asked. I mean, we can provide some figures. I mean, all I would say is obviously we raise council tax bills in line with the council policy, and if they aren't paid, we go through our sort of statutory recovery processes and enforcement processes to try and collect that.
Okay, I'll follow it up in the usual paths, but I think it's something when we're talking about, you know, raising this and raising that. There could still be a lot of revenue out there that we don't get, or not aware of, because people are very clever at hiding.
If I can ask Graham to get those numbers to you and to me as well, that would be very useful, and to members. Thank you.
Yes, that's fine.
So that's that Any other questions on that report? Okay, so happy, subject to the comments made so that'll go through to full council. Okay, now we've got item 7. Now this is the budget consultation, which is pages 11 to 28 in the agenda. These are the answers to the consultation. Richard, do you want to introduce this?
Conscious of time for you all, it's self-explanatory. It's a consultation. It shows how important people felt the various topics were. Kind of speaks for itself, really.
Do we have any questions on it? Councillor Reid?
Yeah, what I would say is that my maths is terrible, as you know, so I've probably got this wrong. But there's 312 people answered the consultation, and there are 300,000 people in Northumberland, so this is I worked it out as a 0.0001% reply to the consultation. And I think what we should be doing next year is to try and get more involvement, because that is, you know, I appreciate the time that people took, but 312 is nowhere near acceptable. What we should be doing perhaps is, rather than asking motherhood and apple pie questions about would you like to spend more money on this, or would you like to spend more money on, you know, the consultation itself did not ask people to make a hard choice at all. Perhaps what we should do is next time we should have something in there that says, if we have money for growth, should we spend it on adult social care, or should we spend it on fixing the roads? Give people a choice, because that doesn't, the consultation, people have gone to a great deal of bother to fill it in, but it doesn't inform us of anything. It just tells us that everybody wants more money spent on everything, and we know we haven't got it. So if we're going to have a consultation process, can we please put some black and white choices in there, so people are forced to think about what the council provides and what they think the council needn't spend so much money on. Thank you.
I think my maths aren't very good, but I think it's 0.01 rather than 0.001. 0.1, yeah. Yes, 1/10 of 1%, not 1/100 of 1%. But anyway, but I think historically,
Chair, I did warn you that my maths wasn't very good.
Yeah. Actually, but I think historically it's quite a high return on these things. And yes, but the difficult decisions are made by us, the elected representatives. We have to make difficult choices. But to answer his particular points, I've got, Neil, have you got anything? No? No. Anyone got any questions? Any officers wanted to answer those? No. Was Paul next?
I'm happy to pass comment just briefly if you want a response on in terms of the consultation bit, which is yes, if you ask people do you want to spend loads more money on stuff, invariably they say yes. So we could probably have a look at it and see if we can do that in a better way. There's been, I remember one in Newcastle where you got to build up the budget and work out where your priorities were, and it was quite an interesting way of doing it. So happy to have a bit of a look at that. Just to add, I think that there was 1,000 people watched us on YouTube as well in total, so that's about 0.3% or something.
Okay, Paul's next.
Two questions, Chair. Is it mandatory that we have this consultation, or is it mandatory?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Because I agree with partially with the Council Reid, because it doesn't really tell us anything concrete information at all. So maybe the questions need to be changed. More importantly, I thought there would be a breakdown of the group of people who answered as they are surveying. See, if I go to Cramlington in any town, in any particular area, and ask these people, I can predict what kind of questions will be coming at. So we would like to know. It'll be interesting to know how diverse those population was. So in the survey, it may be useful if you add something about the profile of the personalities, and then there is another graph which says how many of the people live there, where, that kind of, what is the age and the income, all those breakdown would be very useful as well. So that's my contribution. A suggestion.
Do we collect those or not?
Chair, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we have that information.
Yeah, we do actually collect that information.
You do have that?
Yeah.
We do have that information.
Is it here?
It's not in the report, but I can pull that out.
Could we do a breakdown of the demographics of those?
It would be very useful to look at these, more important, less important, along with the breakdown of the population, the sample population, to see how to make sense of it, because as I said, I can go to a particular area in a particular town, ask questions, I can get exactly the answer I want.
I'm not sure, Chair, I'm not sure we can do that question by question. I think we can give a profile of overall of who...
Exactly, yeah.
That'd be useful.
Who responded.
So we can find where in the county people are that have done it and other information.
What is
age
the
profile.
income group or male versus female, that kind of...
Yeah, we've got some of that information. We asked some of those questions at the end of the survey, so I can share what we have.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Ball?
Yeah, it's just with regards to the consultation taking place over Christmas and New Year. I'm just wondering if there's any chance of being able to move it forward, just because people are obviously a little bit preoccupied over the Christmas and New Year rather than filling in questionnaires, so we might get a better uptake with it. And also with regards to the online and YouTube events, there's still some residents that haven't had replies to some of the questions. I'm just wondering if they're going to get them anytime soon as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, the time, I think, is predicated on the time with the budget. But Richard?
The problem is that the time of the local government settlement, so until you know what money the government's giving you, which is always, as I say, it's like literally, it's often Boxing Day or Christmas Eve or the day before or something like that. So then you need to quickly get something out. We can have a look and see if we can extend it over a slightly longer period, but it does cover, I think, most of January, if I recall correctly. So there's a good amount of time there. It's not just the Christmas period. We're actually, if you're anything like my family, you're probably looking for an excuse to get onto the computer and type out government consultation responses. I'm joking. Yeah, and what was the second point?
The question is, there are some people who have raised issues on the online events that haven't had a reply.
We'll follow those up. If you've got specific ones, send them through to myself and Phil Hunter, please.
And it's just because this consultation is quite generic, the questions, so there's no reason that can't go out earlier. It doesn't matter about what kind of figures. If we're going to ask generic questions, this can go out in June because the priorities are people's priorities with regard to the budget. Yeah.
Councillor Murphy?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think before we get into talking about what the consultation questions should look like, we really need to talk about what the purpose of this is. And I have to say, at the risk of sounding a bit like Councillor Reid, I am a bit concerned about what is the point.
There is no shame in sounding a little bit like me. I must admit.
Well, I am a bit concerned,
Don't forgive
but I'm
yourself.
working on it. So what is the point of it? Now, it says that the point of it is to consider and note the results. It's to provide information from our residents in terms of making decisions about the budget. So I think it would be helpful for me as a member when local residents are saying to me, what's the point of the consultation? It makes no difference anyway. I'd like to see what has been done as a result of this consultation. So surely there's a process of feeding back to residents. This is what you told us, and as a result of what you told us, these are the differences it made. This is what impact it had on. Now, it seems from where the list of implications that it really has had no impact at all. But people have made specific suggestions about money raising, opportunities, etc., etc. I would like to see some feedback to the population to say, as a result of this, we thought this was a good idea, we're taking this forward, or in actual fact, this is more of just a feedback exercise. And that's okay. It's good to get feedback from the public as to what services we provide and what they value, but that's not quite the same, is it, as suggesting that as a result of this consultation, changes will be made to, or potentially made to our budget. So I guess I'd like some clarity around that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Richard?
Thanks. So, I guess that in some respects it's a forward-looking question, isn't it? It's a question for future consultations on the budget. And if you want to run some sort of work stream that says, well, how could we refine the process and compare ourselves to other councils, I think that would probably be quite interesting. I think that the number of replies we've had to the consultation probably outstrip most other councils, or you're certainly sort of level pegging with them. Where the specific bits come in, where there's specific examples of either savings or money-raising opportunities, I'm sure that they do get picked up, and I don't know, maybe Phil can give a bit of opinion on that. I don't want to put him too much on the spot, because it might be that he needs to go back and research some of the information, but perhaps, Phil, you've got a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Happy to go back and get a bit more detail on those questions. I think what I would say is that we always welcome questions for any survey we do, so happy to pick that up, as Councillor Weemouth suggested, as part of a work stream looking into next year's budget consultation. I would say the aim is to keep this survey as straightforward as possible, because well, people have other things that they want to do over the festive. It's also good to keep the questions consistent year on year, so we can start to build a time series from previous years. But as I say, very happy to kind of pick this up as a separate work stream and perhaps bring a draft future consultation back into scrutiny, if that would be useful. The results of the survey, the report, is obviously shared with exec directors and cabinet in advance of scrutiny, cabinet and council decision making. It forms part of the overall decision making on the budget at a cabinet and council level. So the budget consultation launches on the 10th of December. So of course a lot of work has gone into the budget proposals before that point. That's obvious. We can all see that. This is a consultation on the headline proposals, and members will know that it's not an exact science, nor is it a referendum. The consultation that we run, it's just one part of a wider set of considerations that are taken around the budget setting. But that's probably a fairly obvious point. So, but yes, absolutely. I can get a more detailed answer to, how this fits in with the actual specifics of the budget, and as I say, happy to pick up a separate work stream.
That's very useful. I think the idea of maybe bringing a draft one to scrutiny sometime in the summer, might be a nice idea. Right, do you have any other questions on this one, Mark?
Just a couple of quick ones.
Yep, very quick.
Thank you. Richard, what are community services? Have we found out yet? It was one of the questions in your questionnaire. You couldn't answer it at the lack. I'm asking you again.
I will defer to Phil to see what he thought he was capturing with that question, because there's a multitude, I suspect, of things that are covered in community services.
Chair, yeah, it's the services broadly covered by Councillor Horncastle's portfolio. So there's a whole number of services, regulatory, community safety, fire and rescue. But I can get the councillor the kind of detailed list of those services within Councillor Horncastle's portfolio.
I think the point is that even we don't know, so it might be worth maybe making it a bit clearer with this one. But yeah, thank you.
Well, one last question.
Go on, last one.
I only have the two.
Yeah.
This, obviously, because of the time it came out, couldn't have influenced this year's budget. Will it influence next year's? I mean, is that the sort of time lag we're looking at here? I think it's perfectly reasonable to do one in the summer because of generic questions. I've thought for a long time now we should be asking residents what they're prepared to pay for. And I know this isn't it, but it's a step in the right direction.
So I think that what we would have to check is what the actually statutory requirements are for consulting and so on, because there's consultation has many different sort of definitions depending on what bit of a process you're talking about. So is it a statutory requirement that we consult on a budget? Yes. Do you have to have some detail that's potentially available before you can consult on something? Well, perhaps you do. In which case, what at what stage can you legitimately consult and not be subject to legal or judicial challenge and things like that. So I think that probably it comes a little bit at that sort of stuff, Malcolm, but that doesn't mean that we can't run other useful exercises through the course of a year. It just means that, you know, the consultation might have to specifically occupy that time slot.
Well, let's use a bit better than a tick box exercise, you know.
Okay. I don't know if Jan maybe has some comment on that. Is probably the expert in terms of what's the actual statutory requirements in the budget process.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, through you. Actually, there is no statutory requirement to consult council taxpayers and residents on the council's budget proposals. There is, however, a statutory requirement to consult business ratepayers or their representatives, which is why we have a meeting with local business representatives. However, it is a matter of good practice. I can't think of any council that doesn't run some form of budget consultation process, and they come in many different shapes and sizes. So happy to work with Phil and others to pull together some suggestions for how we can make it a more meaningful exercise going forwards. But we're not required to do anything, I think, is the bottom line.
Shouldn't tell us that. Right, well, I think it might be a good idea if we have some thought to that, and I think looking at how other local councils do it might be a useful exercise. Right, so but we've got the report as is. Are we happy to move on? Yep, okay. Right, work programme, it's just for information, 29 to 34. Nothing on there, Sean?
I was just going to say that British Vote have confirmed that they will come to the April meeting, Chair.
Yeah, so we've got British Vote are coming in person, so, and I think we're going to extend the invitation to all scrutiny members to that meeting, I think, because there was some general interest at full council about it, I think, to recall. Right, urgent business, no, I've not been told of any. No? Right, we'll move on to the next part of the meeting. This is obviously for members of this committee, but those of you who are here are welcome to stay and listen to the report if you really wish to. But I'm going to move that the exclusion of the pressure public under the Local Government Act. Are we happy to agree? Agree. Can we turn off the stream?